All right, cool. We are live now. So, hey, I'm glad to be talking to you again. This is cool.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. And I thought I'd do something a little different, a little experiment. Never done this before, but I thought I'd actually like share what notes I take as I take them. It's a little bit of a strange thing to do in street epistemology. We don't normally do that, but hey, I thought it might be nice to for you to kind of see what I'm thinking as I think it. And could it be helpful? Maybe. Could it be hurtful? Maybe. I don't know. But I figured I'd give it a shot. I guess are you cool with that?
No, I think that's interesting.
Okay. Cool.
I'll take notes too.
Oh, awesome.
Even though I have chicken scratch for handwriting, but let me see if I have a pen. Hold on one second.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, back with you.
All right. Cool. Okay, so to start stuff off, our conversation off, I just wanna first of all say thank you for talking to me again. I think this is awesome, so I really appreciate that. And then secondly, I kind of want to have a conversation, and I mean, if you want to go this direction, but I really want to talk about reasons for belief and how we form beliefs and why we should hold on to those beliefs. And I thought I'd start with a thought experiment, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Um,
So the thought experiment goes like this: we got Alan, the alien, and he's not from Earth. He's from some other planet. Who knows what planet? Doesn't matter. So he comes to Earth, and Alan is a kind of a unique alien, or I don't know if he's unique to other aliens, but he doesn't hold any beliefs or any beliefs about religion, about the origin of the universe, about anything scientific in regards to the beginning of the universe. Just nothing. He's a complete blank slate, just nothing at all. So he comes on down to Earth, and what is the best way for Alan to determine what is true?
that's interesting. Does he have contact with anyone? Is there anything that he sees? Is there any empirical things going on? Is there any intuition? I mean, because go ahead.
He's just like us. He landed his spaceship, got out, started walking around, and he
Yeah,
can
yeah, because part of what I was shown last week, in addition to the failure of any other world views in collision with the claims of the Bible, was it's not just one thing, because it is anthropology. Where do we come from? It is empiricism. It is our experiences. It is the question of morality. That's part of it. It is reason. I think I ended with I presupposed logic on your part, as being like, would that be something you would give up? But it's funny because when I was presupposing on that on your part, I would give Bible actually gives an answer for logic. So that like using logic is a logical thing to do, but logic is something, Hume said we intuit things. That's his indubitable. There's other ways of saying what's an indubitable, axioms or a priori. For some people, it's not reason or it's not logic. These questions go back to Greek philosophy. They said, Parmenides or Thales, some people said everything's water. The Greek philosophers who were on who were closer to Iona, who all they saw was water. Everything's water, and everything's one. And that you see that I sort of brought that up with the Eastern philosophies, where everything's Brahman. but we also have that more with subjective worldviews too. Everything's tends to be that, but then you also had the Greek philosophers who said no, everything's fire, earth, wind, because everything's always changing. And then you had other Greek philosophers who said no, it's that's not the case. So epistemological conversations have been going a long time. You had a third camp who said everything's actually very small, atomistic Greek philosophers. So these have been enduring conversations for a long period of time. So, how do we account for math? These questions about the world, we have these abstractions that we can do. There's a lot of great atheist mathematicians, but how do we account for math? So like part of what I was showing last week.
What do you mean by account for math? That kind of confuses me a little bit.
Okay. So what I mean, because part of what I was trying to show last week was not that atheists can't do constructive, really amazing things. Like when I say atheists can do math and better than I'm not good at math. They can't account for math. I'm talking about epistemology. This is why I love epistemology. It's what is the justification for math existing? That's my claim. That's been my claim all along. That's what I was trying to flesh out last week. So math requires a justification, all of these things, when I was saying, like part of what I was showing last week was the contradictions in any worldview that opposes or comes into collision with the claims of the Bible, the metaphysical claims of a sovereign God, a God that would be all-encompassing, a metaphysical, all-encompassing God. And I think anyone watching this video would certainly benefit from watching the first video we did last week, because I do want to respect my wife's time tonight, but I do want to keep making some videos with you. But yeah, maybe try to restrict this one to like an hour or something.
Sure, we can do that.
But and that's me being consistent. I guess one of the things I was trying to point out too is, the claims of the Bible are again meta, all encompassing, and it points to the inconsistencies within Christians. We're not always consistent. So the failures on the part of Christians that's spoken to in the Bible. But what I'm trying to prove is the validity of even why is it that atheists can do things like science, math, these things that came from a Christian worldview, but only make sense in a Christian worldview. So like when I said that it's only in the Christian worldview that makes sense for intelligibility, I said, again, it's not that atheists can't do math, science, especially because I think there's a misconception when I say that, like, scientists, especially because there's an inversion in so many ways, because again, I bring up David Hume, or I brought up David Hume last week, and I said, he was the skeptic. He was an atheist, but he rightly saw the need for a justification, an epistemological justification. He said,
is this for science and math? A justification for those things?
For science.
For
induction. David Hume said, we can't do circular reasoning. Now, I do want to up front say, listen, I am in a way ultimately giving a justification that is coming from the Bible, but it is giving an answer to, it is giving a justification for all these things that I'm bringing up. The other worldviews that just say, well, the world is the way it is not an answer. It's saying, well, the world is the way it is, without providing the justification. So
that's what you're saying? The Bible makes the world make sense? Is that a fair kind of putting in my own words. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, but without making it that simple, because um, the views, whatever they are, again, they're inconsistent with themselves. So just to flesh it out just a little bit more, is math, which is invariant, logic, which is invariant, axiomatic, unchanging, and abstract laws. The question would be, where did that law come from? And again, we could say something like, um, if everything is physical matter, just this, because not everyone holds this worldview. Everything's not necessarily a physical material, but there's plenty of people that hold this physical materialist worldview.
Yeah.
Daniel Dennett, sorry. Everything's material, so he's on the stage with Sam Harris, and he's scoffing at Sam Harris, saying, everything's material. There is no consciousness. Now, Sam Harris should turn to him and say, well, why are there laws? But also, within Sam Harris's worldview, if he did say that, he would be refuting himself, because within Sam Harris's worldview, he doesn't believe in moral absolutes. So
I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts on this are.
yeah,
Is it okay for either one of them? It really doesn't matter which. With regards to that last question about, why are there laws? Could it be, I guess, wise to, instead of coming up with an answer, say, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I think humility, when you don't know something, is amazing.
Hmm. Is that an honest position? Is that the
well, if it's being honest, then it's honest. If you don't know,
yeah?
the claim of the Bible, and this is a tough one to wrap your head around, because again, and I think this is one that sometimes,
I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I was hoping to circle back to my thought experiment. I
yeah, I'm
don't
sorry.
know if
Go for it.
yeah. So Alan the alien, he lands down on Earth. He gets out of his spaceship. How does he determine what's true? Like, what's his first step?
So walks out, he sees stuff, because things are, a web, and they're not just one thing. You're relying on your sensory perception, your physical experience. You're relying on the use of logic. I would believe too that nothing. I guess this is ultimately human reason, but nothing is created by itself. So this alien must have been created. So I must have been created if I'm this alien, or if this alien we're just an abstraction. So there's logic, must have been created, empiricism, some sensory data going on, some intuition, I would say. Is my computer? Oh, there we go. And then, I would say a web of those 4 different things, or 3 different things that I just stated.
Okay. And what does this get Alan to believe is true? What is ultimately his truth claim after he does all these things?
What is his truth claim?
Mm-hmm. Like, what does he determine after he does all these things?
That's such a hard thing to state, because that's like asking like a toddler what is true when because you're equating Alan basically with like being a toddler, right? He's just new
Um,
on Earth.
I mean, I guess let's, for the sake of the thought experiment, let's assume he has a, typical adult, not a brain, functioning 100% and everything. Just unfamiliar with Earth, and he just steps out for the first time.
I don't know. Is it like Reigns Descartes? Is he doubts, so therefore he is. Um, I believe that what is true is that he was created. I guess that's something that you
Okay.
could assume.
I guess that's okay. That's something that he can assume. So his claim would be that he himself, Alan, was created. Okay. And I guess this implies that a God exists.
Correct.
Okay. Kind of based off what you said, he was created. That kind of implies a God, I suppose. Okay. Fantastic. So I guess he can get to just a generic God, just a higher power, I guess you could say. Is that kind of what that would mean
In this,
in this thought experiment?
yeah.
Okay. I guess within this thought experiment, is it possible that Alan ever determines that Christianity is true, that the Bible is true?
By natural revelation alone, I don't see.
Anything. I'm not putting any type of limits on it. Whatever you think.
Well, I don't know if he's an alien that just came into a world without beings, and I don't know how that would be possible. Without,
Without being like
is there?
Earth is just as is, it's just however it's just as it states today. We didn't go
Oh,
anywhere.
yeah, then I'm sure that's plausible.
Okay. Okay. I guess how does that route go? Can you
Oh well, so I mean that's different for everyone. So um, I mean I could tell you personally some things that struck for me. So being raised Roman Catholic, it's funny because I think a lot of the beliefs that we're taught are incorrect beliefs, but I don't believe that's necessarily the biggest problem. I have to believe what the Bible actually says, and that's that is a suppression of sin, of why we don't actually hold to the truth. But I do also think, so what does that mean? First, let me say that. So Alan would probably hold on to his wrong beliefs first and foremost because of a love of his sin. As much as that might not sound coherent for or truthful to Alan's alien ears. Now, how would I convince him otherwise? Well, I do think there's other things too that could
I guess
help.
I'm not so interested in how you could convince him as so much as I'm interested in how we form beliefs and why we hold on to those beliefs. May I ask you a question? Like, suppose you, instead of being raised you said Roman Catholic, right?
Yeah.
If you were raised somewhere in another country, let's say Southeast Asia, and I guess your parents were Hindu, perhaps. Do you
Mhm.
think that today we might be talking about how Hinduism is true?
No.
You don't
Um,
think so?
well, as uh, I that goes against my fundamental beliefs about what I think is true. Um,
I guess I'm asking you to kind of think of a hypothetical where you were born into a different religion.
but that assumes chance. I'm not as in my see that goes against laws. I think you
It's just a hypothetical,
no no
so I'm kind of
I could go with the hypothetical, but
Hmm.
that's why this whole, even in a world, we live in a world with laws, isn't it? Like, one thing I just want to stop and pause and make you even just
Go
consider.
ahead.
We live in a world with laws, and it's so interesting that we, like, even probabilities assume uniformity. That's such a weird thing to think about that people don't even consider. When people design computer programs, even around mathematics and AI, they're they're relying, like the computer code, it's relying on uniformity, and they don't take into account that there's physical laws in this uniform, like in this universe, that is dependent upon something that, like, that came from somewhere. So the God I'm speaking about decrees the families we're born into. So I could play into the thought experiment, and I could absolutely say, yes, I could have been born into a different family, but I just want to back up and pull you out into the claim of, well, you're presupposing, the small-minded Christian thinks this, but I just want to, like, get you to reconsider something. Like, one of the things I thought was so funny, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Like, right after we had the conversation, some of the funny comments that popped up to me, and, like, this person shouldn't be teaching children. And I was just like, I was like, this is so funny, because I'm like, so I immediately popped off and I said,
Yeah.
the
I
strict,
don't necessarily, I don't agree with that.
well,
I think you're
no,
completely capable of
no,
teaching
no,
children.
I know you're such a nice guy, but I just want to, like, get people to think a little. And I was like, the rigid orthodoxy, dare anyone question the fundamental orthodoxy of the secular humanist? Like, God forbid. And I don't mean to use his name in vain. I'm just saying, like, wake up, like, question your presuppositions. And automatically the person was like, only the religious, only the religious doesn't allow questions. So all I did was wrote laugh out loud and recopied the post. And I was like, you don't see the hypocrisy. You don't see it because you don't question your presuppositions.
Hmm.
And someone else was like, faith
So I
enabled,
guess should all question our presuppositions then? Is that kind of what you're saying?
but we got to go deeper. We
Okay,
live in a
deeper than the
world.
presuppositions.
No, no, no. We have
Oh,
to question our presuppositions, but what we call our presuppositions, we're not really always willing to re-examine. Like,
yeah. Yeah, we should, right? We should always re-examine our presuppositions. Is that what you're saying?
correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with you. Like, absolutely. Awesome. You mind? So we were talking about kind of like kind of some of. I think these were some of the kind of the reasons, I guess, or some reasons. I don't know if I think they're your reasons, but you were talking about uniformity, physical laws, stuff like that. I'm wondering if someone from a religion that is not yours could use those same reasons and say, "Hey, look, I have these great reasons right here, uniformity, physical laws, and that that is why my God exists." Is it is that I guess using those two, is that a good if if they can use those reasons to show that their God exists, I guess are they good reasons then? Are they reliable?
Well, again, I would love to see the religions or the religious claims, whether, any religion that would make those claims, because you don't see it in the Rig Veda, you don't see it in the Upanishads, you don't see it in the Tripitaka, otherwise known as the Wheel of Dharma, which is the Buddhism is more secular than transcendental. Um, the Quran, which is dependent and, again, corroborates and make attestations and makes it confirms the NGO, which is the Gospels, confirms the Psalms, confirms the Torah, which is the Torah, and constantly it actually says that Jesus is the Messi, which means Messiah, but then it fundamentally denies fundamental claims of what the Mashiach, the Messiah, Mashiach, and the messianic claims of the Tanakh and the Hebrew Bible are. So it goes to a question of consistency, but there is no religion that makes these claims other than the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh, and the New Testament. So if there was a religion that made these claims,
Yeah.
I would just want to hear that case spelled out.
I guess if there was a religion to your satisfaction that that used these reasons, I guess what would that say about the reliability of using those reasons?
I would say it would be progress on a new way of adopting a Christian worldview, just like there's been a lot of advances in how I would say there's been a lot of advances in the world the last 2,000 years, and blessings that have come from a Christian worldview, even though we forgot where the fruit has came from, and all the blessings have came from. So again, even sometimes people make such outrageous claims like Galileo and Copernicus, they were atheists. And I want to like grab my eyes and just like say like, what? Like, yes, they were considered heretics by the church, but these people were through and through Christians, thinking they were studying the mind of God, thinking God's thoughts after him, trying to understand the uniformity of God's universe that he created, upholded. So I try to understand what other people have to say, but I wonder from like your basis, when someone like um when someone like Richard Dawkins says, that the universe has the properties we would expect, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. Do you see a contradiction in his statement? Like when on the macro level, he says that there's no design, no meaning, but he acts as though on the micro level, he's using words in a semantical and grammatical rule-based way that has meaning.
I would say, with regards to his statement, I don't know. Could there be meaning to life? Maybe. Do I know what that meaning is? No, I don't. And I would want a way to find out what that, if there is a meaning, I would want a way to know how I could be wrong about that meaning. If if there was a meaning, let's say life means to go out and party all the time. I don't believe that, but if I did believe that, I would want to know how I could find out I was wrong. So I would want basically a way to test it. And as of right now, I don't know a way to test that. Does that make sense? You understand, kind of?
I remember you talking about this a lot last week, the falsifiability, and I brought up induction, but I brought up a lot with evidence. The evidence is always going to be adjusted to our presuppositions. And, I'm just going to bring up two different, I am going to just make it personal to me. Hopefully it rings a chord with you, and
No,
maybe
yeah, go
maybe
ahead. I would love to hear it.
maybe you could check these out. when you get a chance. Like I was saying, I was raised in a Christian home, well, Catholic home,
Hmm.
and I rejected the claims, sort of like you said, pretty early on. And I remember, and I don't want to slander the Catholic Church. Last time I said, they're the largest one, and they were called Fidelity, faithful. Even though I don't consider them to be faithful at the moment. I remember being at church, and one of the claims of the Bible is that the heart is so wicked, who can know it? So even if my story is wrong too, that's why I preface this. But I remember there was a sermon that God, Christ, being fully man and fully God, when he was on the cross, he doubted just like any person doubts. So he said on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And I remember hearing that. And for me, it was like, if he doubts, well, I doubt. And looking back on that now, like, there's like just nothing but disgust. But, and that's why I also prefaced it with before, the real reason we choose not to believe, even if it's pathological, even if it's subconscious. That's why sociology, it has its place. Atheists do real good things. It could be a unconscious belief. These words have meaning. They do. So science has its place because we're all made in God's image. But sin is
What exactly? I'm sorry to interrupt. You said atheist, and then you said something about them believing. I guess, how do you define an atheist?
someone who professes not to believe, chooses not to
Oh,
believe.
okay. Someone who makes the claim that God does not exist.
Yeah,
Okay, we have different definitions, but that's
yeah,
okay. That's
we do.
perfectly
I
fine.
don't go with the new definition. And yes, so someone who professes that there's no God, that would be my definition.
Okay.
Um, but yes, because the Bible says in Romans 1 that everyone is, God makes himself known to everyone on a level because of what has been made and because of his evidence by our use of logic. And I'm paraphrasing here because of his divine nature. So, like our ability to speak to each other, our moral compass, our use of reason, leaving us unapologetic without an excuse. So, I suppressed that, of course. I was looking for oneness in the world for many years. I read the Bhagavad Gita, I read the Quran. Um, so the idea that he doubted on the cross, like it's, if he doubts, I doubt. I remember saying that to myself. And then Psalm 22. This was actually after I read many other things within the Bible, but Psalm 22, which was written 1,000 years before Christ was born. Now, they'll get some later dates from various people, but it was well before the Second Temple was destroyed. And it was also in the Masoretic text, but also in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So at least 300 years before Christ was born, you have Eli, Eli, Sabachthani, Sabachthani. So this was sung in the Jewish temple in Psalm 22. And it's right before the Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me beside still waters. And you have this bloody, beautiful one, Psalm 22. And I recommend it. Eli, Eli, Sabachthani, Sabachthani. And it talks about my God. So that's Aramaic. My God, why have you forsaken me? And it goes on to talk about this man who's pleading, why have you forsaken me? And yet he was not forsaken. It talks about these people hurling insults at this man who they thought was being punished by God, but he was actually, the Father never forsaken him. And he was pierced and he was wounded and he's laid in the dust of death. And yet he'll see the light of life. And through him comes the praise of him in the great assembly, and all people will bow before him. So You asked, like last time we talked about a lot of other things that led me to belief. Like I brought up
Yeah,
empirical things, pragmatic things. I brought
sure.
up analogies. You know, there's a lot of prophetic things as well.
Things
Um,
within the Bible that
yeah,
like predictive things, I guess is what you mean by prophetic.
yeah. I mean, I could talk about the destruction of the second temple that Jesus talks about,
Yeah.
but this is one that was very personal to me because
I
when you
guess with regards to this prophecies, I guess are they a good, I guess not. Let me rephrase that. Are they a reliable way to determine what is true? Like can a prophecy be fulfilled, but also that the book that the prophecy contains be not true?
got to restate that question.
Okay, so I'll state it in kind of a hypothetical. So let's say I have a book here, just random book, and it says that in December of 2025, Pierce is going to go to the store and he's going to buy uh, 3 eggs, a loaf of bread, milk, and then he's going to leave the store, get hit by a car. And let's say that does come true, and I didn't read the book, I didn't even plan it, nothing, but it happened. Does that mean the other 999 pages, everything else in it is true?
No, of course not.
Okay. I guess with regards to the Bible, if one prophecy is true, does that mean the whole Bible is true?
Um, with the Bible, again, equating the two books would make it seem like the analogy is true, but that's presupposing that the book is just an ordinary book. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I guess like even if the book isn't an ordinary book, should we use that particular method for determining that the contents are true? Is that something that we should use? Is that should that be a tool in our belt, I guess?
well, again, if it's not an ordinary book, if it was written by the one who made you, then that should
Mhm.
be a totally different way of looking at it. Then absolutely it should be a way of how we look at the world. I mean, the claims of the Bible are miraculous,
Yeah.
and they are, so like one of the claims of Richard Dawkins is, miraculous evidence requires a miraculous claim or something like that. Miraculous evidence requires miraculous claims. Well, the Bible is miraculous upon miraculous. And I find, again, some of the people I talk to about the Bible um, have no idea what they're talking about, unfortunately.
Mm.
Um, and
Yeah,
I,
I could see that being true. I mean, there's a lot of people in the world that don't that haven't read the Bible or have only partially read the Bible. So I can agree with you. I think there's definitely a lot of people out there like that. Um, but I guess if you don't mind, I typed a couple questions out on the screen, and I've been
yeah,
kind of dying to ask them.
yeah, go
if
for it.
If Christianity were false, how could we figure that out? How could we know?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like I significantly spent a lot of time answering a portion of that question last time. What I mean by portion of that,
Maybe
the Bible. But if you mean by Christianity, and how I will answer that question then, is if you mean
we could put Bible here. We could flip out
uh,
Bible. If Bible
uh,
were false, how could we figure that out?
now that's the question I did answer.
Oh, you did. Okay.
If
You can answer it however you want to. Either question is fine.
because if it were versions of Christianity that were false,
I
then
guess how about your version of Christianity?
yeah, um, then it would be not living up to the claims of the Bible. And I think that would be a consistent way of measuring every Christian that claim, and myself, because I'm not perfect. I'm not Christ. I am an imperfect messenger. By the book of John, the letter of John, the epistle says, anyone who says they're without sin, and this is applying to Christians is a liar and makes Christ out to be a liar. So the message of Christianity should be very humbling. And also the sovereignty of God is very humbling, because the sovereignty of God shows us that we are not the authors of our salvation. Jesus says, Jesus says, he quotes the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and he says, first he says, no one comes to the Father except through me. And then he says, why are you grumbling amongst yourself? Don't curse the deaf, and don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind. So he's spiritualizing. He's showing the spiritual aspect of these laws. You wouldn't put a stumbling block, a literal block in front of someone who's blind, but you also want to curse a deaf person. And the reason you wouldn't do that, obviously you wouldn't want to stumble someone and you wouldn't want to curse someone who's deaf, but when he's speaking about this, about evangelizing and bringing people to the gospel, and no one comes to the Father no one comes to him unless they're called by the Father. That's the exact quote. No one comes to him unless they're called by the Father. It's because that you're no better than the person who's blindfolded and can't see. So if they can't see something, they can't see it, then you don't trip them up. You're not supposed to put a stumbling block and make them trip over it. You're no better than they are. So just because you had the blindfold removed earlier than they did, you don't put a stumbling block and cause them to fall over it. That would just make you worse. And you don't curse someone who's deaf
I think I
because,
got the analogy. I'm trying to understand how it fits in here, though.
well, it fits in here because when we talk about evidence, when we talk about trying to understand whether the Bible is true or not, we're going to have a very, very hard time understanding the evidence when we keep trying to make ourselves the final arbiter of the evidence. When we think that we are the sole author of everything.
Can we not think that and try to figure out if the Bible is true?
I'm reading your questions out. Can Alan conduct a test to see if the Bible is true? Of course. Because I'm not precluding, I'm saying reason is only possible from the use of God. So let me ask you, is there more than physical matter in this universe?
Maybe. I
Because
haven't.
because
I haven't. Go.
you do street epistemology.
Mhm.
Have you found a convincing argument that there's more than matter in this universe?
There's nothing that has convinced me to believe that that is the case.
So,
However, there's not a test that I would. There's not a way that I think I could figure out if that wasn't the case either. So I kind of am waiting to make a determination on it, basically. Lacking belief, I guess you could say.
so you're not sure, but you think there's not more than
Mm,
physical matter.
Not necessarily. I'd just like to wait until there's a time in which I could either conduct a test or have some sort of method to figure out if that's the case or not. I wouldn't say that I'm hold the belief that everything is physical.
Okay. All right. Just curious.
Cool.
So can Alan conduct a test to see if the Bible is true?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What's that test look like?
Yeah. Read it. Part of these things are you have to actually check the claims. Again, so many people want to just trust authorities that have been very much failed. The big institutions of our world lately, whether they're religious or scientific or government, have been very inconsistent.
Mm.
And people don't want to check things for themselves. They're slothful and lazy, and they rather just scoff at people who do check claims and do come up with decisions and are bold and make claims. And people like to fight and argue. And I think
I
to a
guess with regards to the authority and the institutions, can the Bible be considered one of those?
yes, but I would argue that it's it's an authority that is objectively true and it's all
I
encompassing.
guess I guess what I'm overall asking, I guess this is what street epistemology is all about. I guess how would we know that that's the case?
As I was saying last time, from the position of the contrary, without that being the starting point, no other position is intelligible.
If we
Because
start at a different starting point, will we come to a different conclusion?
that's why I was asking you to adopt a position. Like you didn't adopt a
Mm.
position. Like you didn't say, yeah. Like if you said, for example, yes, I agree that everything's material. If you actually said yes, then I would say, okay, if everything's material, then give me a reason why reason exists. How do you have reason if everything's material? Because you said the physics in this world are just there. Uniformity in the world is just there. There's no God that decreed it. Well, then great. Your brain is just fizzing neurochemicals because of the physics. You're just agnostic, and I'm just a Christian because of the physics. There's nothing transcendental getting you to choose. You have no free will. So, from the evidence of the contrary, your position's unintelligible. And I don't mean that to belittle your position. I'm just trying to get you to realize from the position to the contrary, no position is intelligible. Where like so try to give me a like can you the materialist position describe to me what a law of logic feels like. Can you hold a law of logic? Can you pick it up? How much does a law of logic weigh? And like these are the types of things I'm trying to get people to realize. And not me. I'm nothing. I am a hypocritical Christian who by the grace of God can see anything, because there's plenty of Christians who are smarter than me and brighter than me. It's just that Christians who do want to espouse the word of God will get scoffed at. Christ said, and that, it makes sense because Christ said, those who persecuted me will persecute you. And I'm not expecting here in America that, oh, I'm going to get thrown into jail. But plenty of Christians who didn't want to get the vaccine did get in trouble. Plenty of Christians who want to have their voice heard on philosophy do get scoffed at. And why does that make sense? Because the Bible says. So it all comes down to in what position does that make sense? Does it make sense in Darwin's worldview? And that's sort of my point.
Okay. I think I followed what you were saying. But I do want to ask this question. Do you use the reasons that you have used to determine the Bible is true to determine other unrelated claims of truth, other things that you know are true?
Of course, because
Can you
again,
give an example?
yeah, 2 + 2 = 4.
Okay.
I mean, it's the same principles. Any because truth. You asked me the definition of truth the other week, and I said that which comports with reality. And there's so many types of truth. The coherence theory of truth, correspondence theory of truth. There's so many ways of looking at truth, and the one thing that we're breaking down in society, which is not truth, even though of course to some degree there is subjective truth, but that's the one thing that I think we should I mean, I don't want to say get away from. I hope you. I mean, we have to have our own unique subjective truth, even within conversations. But when I'm coming to truth claims, when I'm reading a book, there's literary truth claims that I'm understanding from the Bible, but also when I'm um, rereading 1984, and because there's poetic things in the Psalms or Proverbs, more so with Psalms, but also, have I read anything poetic lately? Not really. But when I'm reading something that's a little hyperbolic, or a metaphor, when Jesus says, "I am the gate for my sheep," he's not literally saying, he's being hyperbolic, or no, it's a metaphor. No, he's not. Some people say, is the Bible literally true? Well, I believe, yes, it's literally true, but he's not saying the he's a literal gate for the sheep. You know, so this um do you use reasons you have used? And again, the Bible is all encompassing, because when I say that the Bible gives the precondition for truth, when I say it's the reason that we're even having this conversation. This it's the antithesis to claims. If you found out,
Well, I think I've asked. It's just we're about a few minutes away from hitting that hour mark. I know I wanna respect your time. Um, so I know you said you only wanted to go for an hour. I
yeah.
think Veronica had a pretty good comment here. I'm just gonna pop it up on the screen real quick. Um,
Oh, I didn't realize. I never loaded up. I feel bad again that I didn't hit this. Oh wow, there's a lot of comments.
yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably best if you just don't pay attention to it. It's probably best if I don't either. But I've been asking for suggestions. But I think Veronica asked a good question. What if you found out that Christianity was incorrect? How would your life change?
Oh wait, what was it? I'm sorry. I'll listen.
What if you found out Christianity was incorrect? How would your life change?
Well, sum it up what Paul said. Paul said in why can't I think of the letter right now? But he said, if we found out it wasn't true, we would be pitied of all men. But I'm certain it's not the case, and I say that with all honesty.
Do you think you would do anything differently in your day-to-day life?
No.
You just continue on about the same?
Being honest, it's 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 funny because it's like, I'm thinking of, like, I'm trying to give you a real answer. Like, there's
Appreciate it.
like some remnants of things as a Christian you're still struggling with your old self, but it becomes easier and easier, um, as you to be conformed to what you know to do. And that's not just doing things, but even in your thoughts, most importantly in your thoughts. Um, so it's like, it was funny because when the question came up, it's like maybe some of the temptations in your thoughts. Um, but immediately I was struck with the fact that I know that it is true, and that's the one thing I was warring with. But I think that shows myself how creeping sin is, how sneaky sin is. That even the sin in my head, the thoughts, um, sometimes want the sin wants it to not be true. So it's funny because I was reading a comment that someone said, someone said like he's so petrified of hell, and I think that's not the case. The sin actually wants it to not be true. It wants it not to be true because the sin in my head got enticed. It was like, oh, what would he think? Like, what could I think again? So I think that's interesting because I know it's true. That's interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much all out of questions to ask. I guess I'll ask once again. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I would say, um, I would recommend you revisiting um, Isaiah 53 and checking some of the big textual critics of when that was written. Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22, and see some of the big textual critics of when that was written. And yeah, reading those two chapters. And I recommend that to all the people. And then I just want to see if there's any questions that.
Okay, I'll let you skim through if you want.
Yeah. Would you want to consider? Read these verses that made me believe a text and that. I'm trying to read these verses that made me believe a text indoctrinated to me by my parents. So one thing, I wish I knew the whole comment, but because terrible things are done to us in the name of religion, it doesn't mean that again, I've done terrible things to many people, and people could look at me and they could say I'm a terrible person, and again, I'm a hypocrite. Or Catholicism, I can only imagine what Catholicism did to a lot of people, worse than to me, and it's almost like how can anyone then ever accept the truth claims? It's funny because I was telling someone at work, a coworker, and he like laughed at me too. I said, I was giving him an analogy. Someone was like saying, like, how would you be able to accept, because he was taking it as a fairy tale, and I said, no, it's like 2 + 2, and I wasn't giving the justification like I was today, like why math, you need it to even have math. He was just saying like, no, I can't accept that. But yeah, just because there's baggage doesn't mess with the validity of the truth claims. So yeah, I appreciate talking to me.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess we can wrap it up here. It was a pleasure talking to you. So hope you have a great night, and I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah,
See
great talk.
everybody in the comments later.